of value presentation. This is a quick overview of what is the elements of value. And before I begin the recording for both this and really in general, any of the past recordings that we've done for Plaid or any private groups that I've done that for, is I now am soft launching the app. You can just go in the Apple Store or Google Store and type in Groundswell, and you'll see Groundswell in a circle. And they're all tucked inside the media library, all the replays, so you can just find it there. This Elements of Value is part of something that I've been working with over the last 30 years, which is brand and marketing. In the last 15 years, I've been developing brand guides, brand strategies. And what I'm launching this year is called Brand Coherence OS, or brand operating system, basically. And it's really based in around the book that I'm launching, which is about brand coherence. And it's about scaling your brand, and it's creating the most comprehensive brand strategy, I think, framework that exists. It's at the caliber of, any large agency, but make it accessible to anyone. And so right now my book is slated for August 26th, 22nd, I think, for launch. And inside of there is going to be more detail of the operating system and all the components that's required. In addition, with this elements of value is also overlays inside of the Groundswell book. You'll notice on the right here, it's called levels of impact. We're going to kind of just touch on that, but it's like really there's functional, emotional, and transformational values. It's about emotion and trust. And that is actually what we do in the elements of value. Overall, in this brand operating system, I'm going to show you where this fits in the overall operating system. It's just one little piece of it, but it's a really important one. Anyone that could look at this will get such great value from it. So think of your brand identity and strategy as an island. And there's above the island is the things that we see. It's called brand identity, the logo, the name, the color, the typeface. And underneath it is the strategy. These are all the things that build your brand, the messaging, the construct, the values, the value proposition design, all those things. It's not things that you necessarily see. And when you tie it together coherently, it's called brand coherence. And if you think of visual identity, it can be broken up into what we see. These are things we create, the first impression. Verbal, what we say, it's kind of crafted. Verbal identity is definitely like with story brand. People are familiar with that. That's where that little piece fits in there. And then brand visceral identity is like what we sense. It's a vibe. It can be the feeling of multiple senses. So it's these what's my new book is going to be talking about in detail, this new framework. Usually it's just been given visual identity. It's kind of grouping it together. I broke it up because you can be more articulate with your brand. And you need today in today's environment with AI and just all the competitive landscape. As far as the strategy, there's an intellectual strategy. So you're going to see in this elements of value, there's an intellectual point, a functional point, inspirational. By the way, the intellectual is what are we creating? Inspirational is what are we changing? It's very emotional, right? If you think of emotion in brand and businesses, is you're crafting and you're changing people's emotions. Those emotions are what made me reach for an Old Spice and shift and go to maybe, Ivory Coast or something as another brand, right? And then lastly, brand intuition strategy. What are we transforming? It's the gut strategy. It's like brave brands that make a difference, lean into their intuition, but it's built on an intellectual and inspiration strategy. This here is, if you looked at any brand guide, this is my flagship offering. This would look very familiar to anyone that knows comprehensive brand design. But in the left margins here, these are all the pieces that create your ultimate brand guide, which then creates the brand guide. Then there's a growth marketing plan. And then last, what I offer is this operating system, which is how you actually expand on it. So it's not just a brand guide, it's an operating system. Think of these components as part of your operating system. And right there is elements of value tucked in there. I picked one that is really, I've gone through all these and I'm actually going to be creating a future strategy, which is going to be called a minimal viable brand, like sort of like minimal viable product. Um, uh, Eric Ries, who wrote Lean, it's actually interesting. I'll just tell you guys this. I just forgot about this. He's writing a new book. He's sent me his manuscript. It's going to be out in May, and I'm currently writing it for. I'm writing review, giving him comments and for comment on that book. He's going to be on my podcast, and so um, inspired by that minimal viable product, I decided that most people can't afford a massive comprehensive investment of time to do a flagship type of brand, but actually a minimal viable. And so elements of value is one of those minimum things. So let's get into it. So the elements of value is a simple framework that explains why customers choose your brand over another. It's based on the value you bring, not values, but the value. This isn't just this has been around for a long time for branding. There's multiple articles if you want to just hit elements of value that gives you some background on this. It was developed originally by Bains. It's quite comprehensive and it's been around for a long time. But it's not been typically involved in all brand strategists. It's mostly business strategy. It's only a few of us in branding that have been using it because it's a really smart way to create a more rational brand. And so this is what it looks like. Each of these bubbles has an individual value, and I'll just kind of like sort of cherry pick a few to give you an example. Like on the far on the one there it says connects. It's like you might be connecting to other people or connecting to products. Makes money. That's pretty self-explanatory. You help someone make money or reduce risk, like insurance. You're protecting them. Wellness, motivation, self-actualization, Tony Robbins, helping us grow and become better. Affiliation and belonging, like one of our plat friends that created Vertica Fitness, and the tagline is everybody belongs. It's leaning into the element of value. That is one example of a client that used the core element of value, their highest value in their own value proposition and the tagline. Each of these has a little functional layer. So we're going to kind of just describe it here as the functional layer is like move, change, transform in my book, Groundswell, which is functional is helps people get things done. Everybody has to have those components. A good brand has many of these, and the reality is that you have some people are going to go, well, we do all of these. The goal of elements of value is which ones in which order. So and you could have different mix. You can imagine every different brands have different ones. So the functional value, which is a emotional value, which is generates feelings, life changing, which is about deeper personal impact, and aspirational, which is transformation and contribution, something bigger than ourselves. It's going from transactional value to transformational value. So functional value helps people do things. So it's a basic level where your product or service, solves practical problems. So save time like Google search or make things easier like Amazon delivery or simplifies like the process with Airbnb. At the emotional level, it makes people feel something. This level is about emotions and feelings. This is where a lot of marketing really pulls, but there's a value. It's not just you're not making a emotional text and copy. You're actually the value that you're providing this as an emotional feeling, reducing stress like insurance. It's entertaining. Netflix rewards me like a Starbucks card. Life-changing value improves someone's life. This creates personal or business impact. That helps you learn Duolingo or legacy life insurance or builds belonging. Vertica Fitness, the one that I just gave the example. Or social impact value helps people contribute to something bigger. So this is the highest level. It connects your purpose and meaning. So self-transcendence could be charity or self-actualization, like I mentioned, Tony Robbins, or impact, like my company Groundswell, impacting brands that want to make a difference in the world. The elements of value are special ways your product improves a customer's life, functionally, emotionally, personally, or socially. So you can go look, there's also a little nuances between B2C and B2B. It's the same elements of value, but this is a hierarchy, and all you can look at is going. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You'll almost see very similarities there. So it's built and based on that. This is the new one. So what I'm not going to show, and at the very end of my presentation, is I'm actually just like anyone that was attending the brand Archetypes. I actually, after using it for 15 years, had changed it. I created the 13th archetype because it was more valuable. I've actually, and I won't in this first presentation. I'm going to focus on the traditional, well documented one. But I actually am developing for my book a new groundswell elements of value. After using it for so long, I've realized that I've come up against a couple things that could have been more articulate for modern times, and so I've actually recreated the groundswell elements of value. So think of it like this: if you any so I just want to tie in the work we did with the archetypes. Also, it has the same similar pattern. Provide structure, service control, create, make a connection, intimacy, entertain, connect. If anyone that's, and by the way, if you haven't watched that yet, you can go into the app and go and download or go watch the brand archetypes. It'll make more sense. But those of you that were in that session, leave a mark, liberation, reveal, and mastery, and seek paradise, safety, wisdom, and freedom. So they do intersect, and think of it like they're not. It's not a perfect like tongue and groove. Think of branding as layers. It's like tapestry. What we're doing is this is another way of checking math. If you've ever put together a Christmas tree, you don't just put one screw in, otherwise the whole thing will tip, right? So think of these basic components as you're screwing them in a little bit, these others a little bit, and you're slowly tightening. So usually your first pass on any of these things is you're probably sometimes you nail it, and sometimes you need to go back and refine it because you want to vet it against, say, your archetypes, because your archetype might go, "Hey, I'm a explorer archetype. We don't have a lot of explorer value. We got to decide, did we get the archetype wrong? Or did we get this wrong? Or probably more realistically, is you're going to do something different and create differentiation because Explorer is not traditionally done in that category. That is also permissible and almost desired. The goal is differentiation. And the reason differentiation is marketing and advertising is a tax that you pay for being unremarkable. The goal is to create a remarkable brand. And that is precisely what happens when you create a really solid foundation on the elements of value. It also ties in very nicely with the progression of economic value from Joe Pine. He's writing a new book called The Transformation Economy. It's coming out and it overlays with this elements of value that I'm creating. I was lucky because I already know Joe and I've been following along his book, so I kind of got ahead of the curve before most people in understanding what that is, and that's also reflective of my new elements of value is part of working with Joe Pine. You'll notice Joe Pine has the same hierarchy: commodities, goods, service, experience, transformations. It overlays into that exact framework as well. Just to be clear, there's multiple models that reinforce this. It's a really important value. And in my book, if you've read it, Move, Change, Transform, the elements of value follow the same progression. Ultimately, this is an example of a client one, is what we do once we establish the elements of value down the road when we find our power three words for your business, your pillars is what it's called. In this client's case, it was empowered, clarity, and connection. We go back to the elements of value and we go, what was the functional result? What is the emotional result and aspirational result? The reason you do this is the way you now create copy and communications that's really powerfully leaning into all the aspects, mostly into the values that you bring to the client. And lastly, I will say this. I forgot my ending slide. Okay, well, I had one more slide and I didn't move it into the thing, so I'll leave it on this. So in the end, we're going to be doing another more detailed elements of value. So if you're watching this, there'll be a link to it that you can go watch it. This is meant to be just a quick overview of the elements of value. Thanks. That was it. That's my